Hello and welcome again to Module 4. This is the second part of the 3-part video on lesson procedures. My name is Lanang, and this video is one of the series on lesson planning from ULIS and the Project 2020. This video has 3 parts. So in the first part, we have already looked at activities and the sequence of activities. And then, in the second video, part 2 today, we are going to look at the steps of each activity. In Module 4, Part 1, we come up with 3 most important principles of selecting and sequencing activities as follows. These principles are also useful when setting up and running activities, which we are going to look at in details now. In this module, we are going to look at setting up and running activities in a lesson procedure. Before we start the module, it is necessary to look at the terms. Please match the term with its definition or example. First, the term mechanical drill refers to a practice with memorization and repetition. Examples are substitution drill and rub out and remember, etc. Second, the term meaningful activity refers to an activity in which language control is still provided, but where students are required to make meaningful choices when carrying out practice. For example, in order to practice the use of preposition to describe locations of places, students might be given a street map with various buildings identified in different locations. They are also given a list of prepositions such as across, from, on the corner, near, on, etc. Then, they have to answer questions such as, where is the bookshop? Where is a cafe? Etc. The practice is now meaningful because they have to respond according to the location of places on the map. Third, the term communicative activity refers to an activity within a real communicative context, where real information is exchanged. For example, students might have to draw a map of their neighborhood and answer questions about the location of different places in their neighborhood, such as the nearest bus stop, the nearest cafe, etc. Fourth, the term elicitation refers to a technique to find out and draw out answers from learners to see what they know or what they can guess in a positive way. Fifth, the term scaffolding refers to a step-by-step guidance followed by a gradual removal of spots. Scaffolding means the activities are arranged from easy to more difficult. And finally, the term prior knowledge refers to the background and content knowledge learners have before the lesson. Before analyzing an activity to see its elements, it's necessary to identify the types of activities. A type of activity can tell us some general information about the focus of an activity. There are several types of activities in the primary English textbook series. This is an example. The activity Point and Say is a mechanical and oral drill on the sentence pattern, asking and answering questions about one's house. It is a substitution drill where students can change their names to make similar dialogues. It's very important to identify the type of an activity because we know that different types of activities have different steps. Moreover, when we see an activity that is not very meaningful to students, we can adapt that activity. Now, decide on the types of activities. This is a listening comprehension activity, and it is meaningful because students can check how much they understand the message conveyed. This is a mechanical drill. Students are required to copy the words and write in the gaps. In order to do the activity, students have to remember the sentence pattern. In fact, it isn't a writing activity, although the name is Let's Write. This is a reading comprehension activity, although students have to write their answers. To some extent, it is meaningful because students can check how much they understand the message conveyed. However, this activity isn't very interesting to children because they don't see a good reason to do the activity. Most of them may think why they have to know about house routine. This is a writing activity. To some extent, it is meaningful because students have to interpret the pictures and write their answers accordingly. This is a writing and speaking activity. It is communicative because there is a room for students to relate to their own life. This is a pronunciation and read aloud activity. It is a mechanical drill because students have to imitate the sounds and read the words and sentences. This is a vocabulary writing activity that is communicative because students have a good reason to practice writing words. Here, they write words to make a menu, which is close to a real-life activity. This is a meaningful reading aloud activity. The focus of the activity is on pronunciation. Students are expected to imitate intonation. When they chant, they can remember the words more easily, especially with some TPR action as cues. And now, in order for us to analyze the structure of an activity, and decide on the order of the steps in such activities in a lesson, it is necessary to identify the basic elements in an activity. So, let's do task 1. And here's the answer to question number 1. What information is provided in this activity? As you can see, the first information is the name of the activity. Here, the name is Listen and Repeat. The type of activity is presentation, and it is rather meaningful because this is context for the language item. Then we know what teachers and students are going to do in this activity, or the actions done by the teachers and students. The actions are listed in steps. First, teacher elicits the picture to help students understand the situation. Then teacher plays a tape. And there are 7 steps listed here. It means that the steps comes in certain order. Later, we are going to analyze why one activity goes in a certain order, or the rationale behind such order. We also know how long the activity lasts. 8 minutes for activity Listen and Repeat. And there's information about how the teacher monitors learning and checks how well the students do the activity so as to give feedback accordingly. Or in other words, it is about assessing how the students achieve the objectives of an activity and of the whole lesson. Moreover, we know about the interaction patterns in the lesson. Students work in pairs in this activity. Finally, there's information about the materials used in the activity. Here, the materials come from the student's book, accompanied with the recordings. Besides, we can clearly see the role of teacher and students in this activity, although it isn't explicitly written down. Is that everything we want to include in an activity? Well, in some lesson plans, there are aims or purposes or objectives for each activity. These serve as a guide for us to follow. The purpose of an activity gives us information about what to teach. The objective of an activity tells us what to expect from the students to achieve after the activity. To sum up, activities in a lesson plan gives us information about what to teach and how to teach it. We've got information about the focus of the activity and the steps to carry out the activity. In other words, the steps of the activity tell us about the way to structure the activity in both content and classroom management. So, there are important elements in an activity. They are as follows. When analyzing the activity Listen and Repeat, we have the following information. Now, let's analyze the reason behind each step of the activity Listen and Repeat. Match the reason to the step. And here is the answer. Now think about the reasons why we need different steps for the activity listen and repeat. And here are the underlying reasons for the steps in the activity. First, we need to activate student prior knowledge about the topic and the situation before teaching, because we believe that First, we need to activate student prior knowledge about the topic and the situation before teaching, because we believe that in order to learn a new thing, students need to relate what they know to the new thing to see the connection between them. And it is believed that when relating things to each other, it's easier for learners to remember a new thing. Next, we need to give students opportunity to get access to the oral form of the target language in its context before teaching that target language item. It is from receptive to productive. By doing so, we replace the natural order of learning a language, which starts from listening, then speaking, reading, and writing. Students need to hear the language and work out its meaning before learning it. Then, we need to give students opportunity to memorize the dialogue through repetition, using the recording as a model to practice pronunciation, because students can't remember the pronunciation and intonation of new pattern if they don't practice it. And using the recording helps students imitate the pronunciation more accurately. When we get students repeat the dialogue in whole class first, then in pairs and individually, we reduce report lag. When we get students to repeat the dialogue in whole class first, then in pairs and individually, we reduce support gradually and make students more confident when reading out. Finally, we need to monitor students' progress to identify students' difficulty and provide solutions because we want to support lag. Finally, we need to monitor students' progress to identify students' difficulty and provide solutions because we want to support them in time and make them improve their learning. We need to see if students achieve the objectives or not, to identify weaknesses and ways to improve, because that is the goal of our teaching. We also need to keep records of student learning by marking or giving written comments and feedback so that we and other teachers, other students themselves, and their parents will see students' progress in a systematic way. This is a lesson from the textbook Tiếng Anh 3. It targets Vietnamese grade 3 students who are beginners of English. Now answer the two questions. As analyzed earlier, we can structure a basic activity if we pay attention to the 5 principles as follows. First, activate student prior knowledge about the new contents or the teaching points by asking questions. Similarly, elicit what students have known. By exploring students' previous knowledge, it's easier for teachers to identify the starting point of the lesson, and students can easily see the connection between known knowledge and new knowledge. Therefore, they can deeply understand the new knowledge. Second, support student understanding by going through certain steps, from easy to more difficult, from receptive to productive, from listening to speaking, from teacher-led to student-led, from whole class work to group work, peer work, and individual work. Third, organize the activity, thinking about the time for each step of the activity and the way students work. We should answer such questions as: do they work in pairs or in groups? How to group them? How to give instruction, etc. Fourth, monitor the activity. Observe and see and listen to students. Go around the class to see if someone needs help. Finally, evaluate student learning and evaluate the activity. Assess students and see if they achieve the objectives or not. We also need to see if the activity is suitable for the students or not, so that we can adapt it accordingly. Let's analyze this activity. And here is a possible answer. And here is a task for you. You are expected to finish the task within 2 days. Then, send your work to another colleague for peer review. Now we come to an end of Part 2, Module 4. In Part 2, we just looked at different types of activities, 9 elements of an activity, and 5 factors to structure an activity. See you in Part 3, Module 4, in which we are going to discuss how to integrate assessment in the lesson procedure. Goodbye.